Hey, what's up, guys? Good to see you again as we're in our checkup with PG. And we are grateful again as we've been in a tremendous series entitled Finding the Cure. And the whole aim and intent of this series has been to help us, to challenge us, to allow us to be able to see how we can navigate some of the spiritual viruses that can many times cause tension, can cause trepidation, especially in times like this. Coronavirus is not the only thing that's being devastating, but we've been talking about some things over the last few weeks like fear. We've been talking about worry, discouragement, and this past Sunday, we talked about despair. And I'm grateful to have back with us a guest with us that came with us on the first time that we had it. Dr. Natalie Bryan is back with us. We're so grateful for her. And so she is going to be sharing with us as we talk about this whole notion of despair and hope. And so I'm so grateful all of you are tuned in. I'm grateful to see all of you with us tonight and what I believe is going to be an incredible conversation because for all of us, we wrestle with it. It is a problem that if we're not careful, we can find ourselves in despair and we can find ourselves really navigating into the depths and throes of depression. So I want you to buckle up tonight. We have our team ready to roll. I want you to engage us in conversation tonight. I know that this is going to be helpful and beneficial as we try to be better. And that's really the chief aim of what we are going through. All right. Well, to set the stage for tonight for our interview, and before I give the introduction of Dr. Natalie Bryan, let's go into that sermon series video just to set the stage for our conversation on tonight.
The virus of fear, worry, discouragement, loneliness, and despair has overtaken our lives. We're in a spiritual health crisis. In times like these, it's easy to give up. It's easy to allow the troubles of today to disrupt the hope of tomorrow. We're trying to figure out, will life ever be the same? We're faced with the reality that we have been infected. The question for us is this: when we're fighting for our lives, what do we need? We need help. We need healing. We need a cure. Isn't that what we're looking for?
What's up? Once again, we are excited to have back with us Dr. Natalie Bryan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Oh, man, it's just good. It's good to see your face. Grateful for you coming back and hanging out with us on tonight as we are continuing the conversation. And you were so helpful and so beneficial and impactful in the last time that we had a great conversation as we were talking about worry and fear. And so I'm grateful that you acquiesced to our request to come back and to have a wonderful conversation about despair.
Yes.
And I kind of dealt with the series sermon on Sunday, despair, and I tied it in with depression. And I talked about how the cure for it from a spiritual perspective is hope.
Mhm.
And out of all the messages that I've shared over the last few weeks in this series, this is the one that has been getting the most kind of response that
Mhm.
has been coming to me personally as
Mhm.
people have been talking about despair and depression and how they're trying to navigate this next normal. And so I'm grateful that you're back with us. We gave a rather lengthy introduction before when you were with us, but you're a tremendous therapist, Christian counselor. You are an author. You have so many wonderful accolades. We're going to put them up on our screen so that people can connect with you. And when we come back through this conversation, we also want people to be able to know where to connect with you, because one of the things I've been hoping is that in this time, people would be able to find some way to get some kind of even virtual therapy. You know, I've really been
Yes.
pushing that and telling people how important that is. So let's get into this conversation. Now, how you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me
Awesome,
again.
man. Grateful to have you back with us. Well, we're talking about despair. Can you give us some ideas? How would you define despair? How would you define despair?
Well, despair really is kind of the complete absence or loss of hope. That's
Okay.
really the basic generic definition for despair. It's where hope is absent.
So how would you also, if it's a place of loss Ness, how would you make the partnership between despair and depression? Because in my study of it, I saw them kind of being, even though they're not necessarily the same, I saw them in a lot of times being least traveling companions. I
Yes,
mean,
yes,
they like travel together. So you have
they
despair,
do.
and despair always kind of leads to depression. So how would you see those both, and how would you define from a clinical perspective depression?
Depression, by a clinical definition, is a period of 2 weeks or longer during which a person is either in a depressed mood or has had a loss of interest or pleasure, and at least maybe four other symptoms that reflect a change in functioning. So maybe something with sleeping, eating, their energy, their concentration, what their self image and self care looks like. Depression is very, very real. Um, and it's very similar to despair. But despair, although it is a debilitating disorder and it has some of the similar personalities of depression, it's not clinical because you can actually have the same symptomology, but despair can be ongoing. It doesn't. There doesn't have to be a time frame necessarily attached to despair. So it's just despair differs because it's individual to individual, and there
Mhm.
isn't kind of a time frame on that and a clinical diagnosis for it. So someone can be in despair for a very long time and
Wow.
just have this sense of hopelessness. And it can come and go. Some people may feel okay if they're around certain people, it brings them up, but they can roll right back into that sadness and that feeling of hopelessness if not checked.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I saw in my study is that
Mhm,
despair is one of those things where it can come and it can go. Like you said,
mhm,
like you can have some good days, and
mhm,
then you can have some bad days. You can have moments where you're feeling fine
mhm,
and the sun is out,
mhm,
and then you can have a day where it's a low, low, low. And how would you, if you're diagnosing this, because
mhm,
some people want to assume that I, I I love Jesus, and
mhm,
so I'm never going to be in despair.
mhm.
What would you say to those who try to over spiritualize these moments of despair, or really don't think that maybe I'm too saved to find myself in these kind of despairing moments or despairing seasons?
Well, the first thing I would want to say to people is we are all human. We're not robots, and feelings and emotions, they come and go. They may seem fleeting, but when your state of low is low all the time and it's taking you over a long period of time and you notice it's impacting your eating, your sleeping, impacting you going to work, participating in your family activities, engaging with your friends socially, and you want to isolate and you want to box yourself in. If you're not monitoring despair, you can end up in a clinically depressed state.
Wow.
So people don't recognize it, but if you're not paying attention and being in tune with who you are as an individual, you absolutely can end up in a state of depression. And many people don't recognize that we walk around in many diagnoses functioning. So
Okay.
we are functioning in dysfunction.
Wow, functioning and dysfunction. Go and parse that out a little more because that's deep. I think,
You know,
a lot of us are not as honest about it as we
yeah,
should.
there are a lot of people who are clinically depressed or have other mental health disorders, but they're coasting. So they think that everything is kind of okay. Like, okay, this is what every day has been like for me, and it's not better. Or I'm getting by. I'm doing better than Sister Sally. I'm doing better than Brother Joe. So I'm doing okay. Not paying attention and being in tune with themselves to recognize that, hey, this is really a low low. I'm really in a space of anxiousness, really in a space of depression. I may need to get some assistance. So, what I usually tell people to do is because we all fall into a space of either anxiousness or depression, as I said before. Um, if you lose someone, you're going to get sad, you're going to want to withdraw, you want to go through that grieving process. That's a situational grief of depression. It's temporary, it's short term, possibly depending on who the person is that you lost. And you still cope on the outside. But
Wow.
then you have to think about when it takes you out of the realm of your normalcy. You're not getting up to shower. You're not combing your hair. You're not changing your underclothes or your undergarments. You're not making sure that you smell good when you go outside. You're
Mm.
not eating enough. You're not making sure that you do some basic exercise. You're not going out into the sun. You're locked up in your room. You're under the blanket. You're just binge eating. I've had a lot of people lately, especially with COVID, their thing has now become eating disorders, eating and purging, because that is a sense of control. They're depressed. They don't know what else to do. That's something that they can control. So if you're not paying attention to your behaviors and being in tune with you, you can definitely find yourself not just in depression, but in a spectrum of other disorders.
Wow. Yeah. So gets reached out to that, and they say, "This is where I'm at." And what can people? How can people now? This is I want to kind of divert this way. If let's say, how can I see
Mhm.
someone and tell they're in despair, right? Because oftentimes we don't know personally that we may be there, but
Mhm.
most of the people now who are still quarantined, even though we're still kind of venturing out and people are still trying to figure out, what we should do. Let's say I'm a loved one. What are some things I should look at
Mhm.
that and talk about and try to identify what
Mhm.
despair is? Like what are some telltale signs? I know you said something about don't want to get up. You were saying even like hygiene, which is
Yes.
heavy,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know. Uh,
Yeah.
so if I'm a loved one, what are some things? Because everybody doesn't say that I'm despairing, right? Everyone's not saying that I'm going through right now. That's not the cliche thing. Everyone wants to claim to be so strong all the time. Uh,
Mhm.
what's some things you would say to those who love ones? What are some things we should look out for?
Well, I think in this time, especially, everyone is in this, like I said, this situational place where they're depressed, they're anxious, all types of things are popping up. So, like I said, look at the things outside of the realm. I'm the first of a single parent, and but my mother can hear my voice and know when something is not right. My sisters can see if something is not wrong in my behavior. So, um, if you see that your family member or your loved one is sleeping away days, you know,
Mhm.
not engaging with you, not engaging with anybody else, um, seem like they're holding a grudge. They're angry. They have no reason or trigger for the anger. They just have this underlying anger or sadness. If you're paying attention, they're not sleeping at night. They're up for hours and hours on end. And people don't realize that when you don't sleep, that also causes psychosis. So you need to pay attention if people are not sleeping for days and days at a time. That can actually create another psychosis on top of the issue that they already have. So you want to check out what they're eating, if they're eating healthy, if they're just binging on certain items, what those items are. Sometimes people are over medicating. If they have some medication for something simple, they start to over medicate, start to utilize their medicines a lot faster. Definitely not getting outside of the house, not getting some fresh air. Isolation is a major thing, locking
Mhm.
themselves away for long periods of time, not wanting to engage socially. And like I said, the hygiene thing, the sleep thing, all are great indicators. And if you live with someone, they're easy to see. If you don't live with someone, this is where we have a responsibility as community to check in. You check in with your friends, you check in with your family members. How are things going? What's going on? If you hear them being listless and kind of like, well, tell me more, just give them some open ending questions, probe a little bit more than the surface answer, and find out if it's just more than that. You also want to check in if they lost their job or if they are having some financial difficulties at this time, which are major situation, especially if they're a parent or they own a home. Are they going to lose their home? What does their livelihood look like now? What is their new normal? All that impacts that.
Yeah. You said something deep. Most people don't think about it, but how important is sleep? Because I hear this a lot, even in some of my research for this sermon series and things that I'm just trying to glean and grow
Mhm.
personally. I see this in a lot of different things. I see sleep come up a lot.
Yes.
Why is sleep so important?
Sleep hygiene is so important because after a while you do literally have a mental health disorder after so many hours of not sleeping. You
Wow.
need that reset in your body. People don't recognize that your body goes through a total reset when it's changing. That's why they tell you don't eat late at night, because when you eat late at night, it throws your body off from being in a rest state. Metabolizing food takes a lot of energy, and when your body should be resting and relaxing, it's burning food. So you are utilizing energy while you're supposed to be resting, and then you're getting up and utilizing energy. When do you recharge? When do you relax? When does your body get a time, your brain get a time to just rest? So it is very important. Sleep hygiene is one of the things that we definitely talk about. Last time we spoke, I spoke about the guided meditation group that I like to utilize on YouTube called The Honest Guys. They have a whole series on just sleep meditations because people, and I mean, people are having a hard time sleeping generally. But when you're going through a situation like COVID, when you're going through job loss, family loss, grief, depression, anxiety, functionality issues, sleep is rare. So you need to definitely get into that REM level of sleep to be effective and to have clear thought to process and focus on what your new goal is.
Okay. Well, so all right. So
Mhm,
sleep is important. You also said something about
mhm,
isolating. I will say, yeah, that's a symptom because that's another one of the things that I'm going to attack
mhm,
during this series is loneliness and isolation.
mhm.
How do you see those tied into those two things?
Well, loneliness and isolation, think about now where people are having a hard time social distancing from each other and being in the house. You're finding so many people are like, I can't cope. The walls are closing in on me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I need somebody to talk to. And they may have family there, they may have friends there, but the socialization of people, we, especially as African American, have always been a communal population. You know what I'm saying? We just grow and develop and seem to recharge each other in these community settings. And when we don't have that, when we fall away, it's kind of like that lone wolf syndrome. Wolves roam in packs, and then when you see a wolf that's by himself, he's going to die because he doesn't have that whole hosting of his family and that communal love and companionship. And when people start to isolate and withdraw, then they get into their thoughts that are very unhealthy, and there's nobody else for them to bounce those ideas off to say, hey, that's not right. I think maybe you should think about it this way. There's no one to interject hopefulness. There's no one to interject positivity. So if they're ruminating or thinking on things that are unhealthy and no one is there to challenge them to say, hey, that's not right, and then they're up for days and days and days, you have a whole recipe for someone having a mental break or a psychosis disorder where they act irrationally, act out, become dangerous, not just to themselves, but to others.
Wow, that's heavy. You reached on something because I do think that's a part where I think the struggle has been in the not gathering together, right?
Hmm.
How we as African Americans are communal,
Hmm.
and I do wonder how much of that has kind of fed into this notion of despair
Hmm.
and depression, right? I mean, you can get so withdrawn
Hmm.
that ultimately, I guess I said this to someone the other day. They asked me, I said, here's the truth. I think a lot of times you don't know what you have till it's gone, right?
Hmm.
We don't appreciate the interaction. We didn't appreciate the, having one another, until we've kind of gone through this situation. So, with that on the rise, how prevalent is depression? I would raise this as well because as much as you've given despair, which is so unique within itself, and depression, um, who can catch it? Who can get it?
Anybody.
Anybody.
Anybody can become depressed, and given the right circumstance, and COVID is the perfect circumstance. Depression has been on the rise, eating disorders, abuse has been on the rise, anxiety has been on the rise. A lot of people with mental disorders have now had compounded mental disorders on the rise. Substance abuse is on the rise. It is all on the rise because of COVID, because people are either trying anything that they can to cope with what's going on. And you have to think COVID has been going on for probably around what, 8 to 12 weeks officially, somewhere in there. And really, you have to be in that state of lost interest or whatever for 2 weeks. So basically, some people are already in situational depression. They just haven't identified it as that because they have been functioning in their dysfunction.
I've been thinking. So
Mhm.
tell me this, because I think depression, despair was bad pre-COVID.
Mhm.
Despair and depression is going to be bad mid-COVID.
Mhm.
What are y'all thinking through from the medical standpoint and the therapist counselor standpoint on the post-COVID
Devastating.
idea of despair and depression?
It's going to be devastating. I really don't think people are thinking about the ramifications of it because right now we're processing it and going through it. COVID right now is minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day because we don't know the outcome. There's no predictor. There's no end in sight technically. So everything that we're learning about COVID, we're learning as we go. So there is no precursor, there is no incursor. We're just kind of in it, muddling through and hoping to get there. Once the ball drops and we're like, okay, we're out of COVID. And this is where you have to remember we're fighting through this. And when you're in the middle of a fight, you're like, okay, we're gonna make it to the end. We're gonna make it to the end. We're gonna make it to the end. And you see the finish line of a possible finish line, kind of like a garage, and you're fighting through to get to the end of that thing. When you come to the end, that's when that adrenaline, all that stuff starts to wear down and wean down. And once you cross the finish line, you're like, oh, I can breathe. It's over. That's when you're going to see all the chip fall. I mean, I talk to doctors that are in New Jersey, New York, Connecticut. I talk to nurses that are in, and I mean, they're functioning, they're moving, they're just doing what they have to do to make it happen, but they're crashing and burning on the other end of this thing. And that's just the frontline people. We're not talking about the second line people, the people who have to deal with loss of job, their kids being at home all day and they can't leave the house because they have no child care, and on and on and on. It's such a compounded issue. This is going to be devastating if we don't put the resources in place to stop, the hemorrhage as best we can.
Yeah, I think I've used this analogy before. I think it is an appropriate one. I mean, how I see it, it's like being in a car wreck, right?
Mhm.
So when it first happens,
Mhm.
you jump out the car, you're fine. You just happy to be alive, right?
Mhm.
And they ask you, you want to go to the hospital? No, I'm good. But when you go to sleep that night, you wake up the next morning, your muscles are tense.
Mhm.
Feel
Mhm.
you feel the pain of it,
Mhm.
even though it was after the event. And I
Mhm.
think that's one of the challenges, like in trying to put a timestamp on this. Many of us just don't know because once again, we are going moment by moment, day by day,
Mhm.
and week by week. And there's still, this is still fresh. This is, even though it's been 8 to 12 weeks,
It's
it
very fresh.
feels like 8 to 10 years, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I was reading a podcast. I was listening to a podcast on how on the difference of time and how the brain computes time, which was an
Mhm.
intriguing thing that really stimulated me intellectually. And it just talked about how we've been in this thing 8 to 12 weeks, right? But then it feels like 8 to 12 years, right?
Yeah.
It feels like we're just dragging on. I had to remind somebody we're still in May. Like I got literally 2 more weeks of May, and
Yeah.
we technically got shut down in March. So we
Yep.
were going to put it together. It's like only 2 months, and it
Mhm.
feels like so much longer.
Yeah.
That really my prayer is I really am hoping, I don't know
Mhm.
how to manage ourselves in the middle while we're trying to get to the end. What would you
Mhm.
say from that perspective? What would you say? What would be some things, some practical things? And then I
Mhm.
want to get the practical piece. And then I want to talk. I want you to put on your spiritual hat. I know you've been the technical therapist, but I want to go because I did say that hope was this, the great cure for despair. But what are some practical things that while we're still in it, while we're still navigating
Mm-hmm.
this next normal, and while it's still fresh, what were some practical things that, from your perspective and professional knowledge, you think people should be thinking through or doing or putting into lives? I know you said sleep.
Yeah, sleep is great. But I wanted to touch base on that analogy you used for the car accident. I talk about my family, so please excuse me. My sister's
You
gonna
got it.
kill me when she sees this. So my sister lives here in Augusta. She's the reason why I'm here. Shout out to Monique. But
Hey, Monique.
she had she started working on Fort Gordon probably 2 weeks in. She got hit by a tractor trailer on 20, and her car flipped over like 7, 8 times. And I was panicked because I was like, oh my gosh, if you saw the car, you definitely thought something happened to her. And I got there and I was just all panicked, and I'm running and I'm talking to the people and whatever. But when I get there, thank God, nothing is broken. There's no blood. There's no nothing. The car looks terrible, but she looks physically okay.
Mhm.
So we were like, okay, this is great. But as you said, when she woke up with the aches and pains and all of those things, and she was hurting, which was natural. Her car flipped over. But here we are almost like a year later, and my sister is still struggling with walking. She's still struggling with pain. She's still struggling with, and people are like, but she didn't break anything, but she didn't hurt anything, and she didn't, why is all this? People don't recognize our muscle has memory.
Wow.
Our muscle has memory, and our brain is also a muscle.
Yes.
So our brain, when it's processing trauma, depression, anxiety, those mental health disorders, those hormonal and chemical reactions, adrenaline, cortisol, all those things, that's running through our central nervous system.
Mhm.
That stuff is affecting our bodily organs.
Mhm.
Our brain is pumping out chemicals. Our heart is pumping faster or slowing down depending on the circumstance. Our central, out the back of our brain is lighting up. Our nerves, our neurotransmitters, everything is on 10 with cortisol. And if you know anything about cortisol, you know that it being in your body for a prolonged time is really unhealthy. Not
Mhm.
only does your blood sugar go up, your hypertension happens, all of these things, our whole sympathetic system that gives you that flight, or freeze, all of that stuff is affected. So people don't recognize that even though we are in a state of depression, we also are in a state of anxiousness because
Mhm.
we're unknown phenomenon behind this situation. So while we are not moving lethargic, just can't move our bodies, our brain, our heart, everything is pumping because it's an unknown place. So some of the things we have to do is we have to take a step back, honestly, and just breathe. When we take our breaths right now, and I think I said this last time, we don't even take a deep cleansing breath. We
Mhm.
breathe very shallow if you look at how we breathe. Take some deep cleansing breaths, at least 6 very deep. I'm talking about where it moves your whole body and blows it all out. Give your time for your brain to reset when you take those deep cleansing breaths. Slow it down, get your hormones and things like that to normalize. And then you can reframe and refocus, and then start to slowly reprocess. Don't go so fast. Sometimes we're ready to go, 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 go. And this is a time where we need to take a step back, take some deep cleansing breath, and just breathe. Take a step away from whatever it is that has us triggered, if there's something that has us triggered, and give ourselves some time. Sometimes just taking a walk, open your door, look at nature, take a walk down, walk up your block, come back in the house, set reset your whole tone. You know, as you're looking at things and coming back in, come back in the house to refocus on what you need to do. Just sit down and then just take it one bite at a time, one tiny bite at a time. Don't get overwhelmed, because that's what it is. It overwhelms all of our systems are pumping, and we get overwhelmed. We spoke about guided meditation. It definitely is important to have some meditation. You can meditate on the word, you can play gospel music, play that. You can follow one of the guided meditation groups or practitioners, um, do some yoga or be in a relaxed pose. One of the things that I said is allow your house to be a home. Set aside some place for some peaceful time. I know some people have prayer closets. Some people have, you know, the men have the man cave and the women have a she shed. And go in your she shed. Have a couple of moments to yourself and then come. Don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay to not be okay. We are not God. We don't know everything. It's okay to take some time and not know. Take a step back and then relaunch again. We were not handed a manual to life. So we're just going through the motions. This is something we've never experienced. We have to give ourselves some grace, so we need to be gentle on ourselves.
Yeah.
If you're really in a really panic state and all that stuff is going on, don't make any big decisions. Leave that for a time where your mind is a little bit more clear and you're a little bit more settled. So those are just some things.
I love it. We're gonna list that out because I think you gave some very impactful and very practical information that I think we need to, the sleeping, taking a breath,
Mhm.
even if those who are watching us now,
Mhm.
practice, you know,
Mhm.
and breathing, and even meditation is something I've added in my discipline. There's a wonderful book I've been reading entitled "The Body Keeps the Score," and it talks
Yeah,
about that
yeah,
same
that's
thing you're
so
talking about.
absolutely.
It was mind blowing
Yes.
to read that book and to realize that a
Mhm.
lot of the trauma and things that I thought
Mhm.
I was through was
Yeah,
not through. My
you're
body
not
accepted
through. I think Bessel van der Kolk is the
Yes,
author of The
we're
Body
gonna
Keeps
we're gonna put that
Score.
up. It's an
Yeah.
incredible book, very technical, those who wanna
Mhm.
pick it up and read it,
Mhm.
but it is very deep as far as making us realize that, our body, even if you think your mind has moved on,
Mhm.
your body still recalls the trauma on so many different levels, not just physical, but emotional,
Mhm.
all kind of it just keeps the score, and so that was a wonderful recommendation a friend of
Mhm.
mine gave me some years ago,
Yeah.
and it really opened my eyes because I don't think that we realize how much we keep with us. And
Yes.
we don't realize how much we carry with us every single day.
Every day.
And I've said this before that we're all are the sum total of our experiences.
Mhm.
And that's good and bad. That's
Mhm.
that's that's what we wrestle and
Mhm.
struggle with. And
Mhm.
so that book has really been
Yeah.
revelatory and
I
just
recommend that all the time. I recommend that book all the time when I'm talking to my patients about trauma. And that's what I was speaking about some of that muscle memory. It's in there, and we don't recognize it all the way. And if we're not willing to go and do the work to do that repair trauma work, we definitely carry it with us. The Surgeon General, I believe she's of California, Dr. Nadine Burke, I believe is her name.
Mhm.
She came up with the concept of the ACEs score.
Wow.
That's the adverse child experiences, and many of us as adults should take the ACEs. And I found that a lot of adults,
Where can we get that?
you can get it online. It's not a very large scale quiz. I think
Okay.
it's only about 10 or 12 questions,
Okay.
but it lets you know how much adverse childhood experiences impact who
Mhm.
you are today, and what your score is indicates what life is kind of going to look like. And I mean, that ACE score is excellent, and I always recommend it. Definitely find out what your ACE score is. What was your childhood like? People think that they don't recognize how, just not even our experiences, how our relationships with our family and our friends, how that impacts us.
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, we parent how we were parented.
Wow.
So even if it is something that was dysfunctional, we've learned that. And even if we try to stray away from it, um, and be the complete opposite, somewhere along the line while you're going through, you'll find out you're doing the things almost exactly as your parents did, even though you tried your best not to.
So
So
can you pass down trauma? Are you saying you can pass down trauma?
oh yeah,
Wow.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Okay.
that's why it is best for us to unlearn and relearn. But we
Wow.
won't know that unless we're intuitive in ourselves to say, okay, that is something that I intrinsically want to change about myself. So that I don't pass that behavior on to my children and they continue that situation on. We don't recognize how we take things in. It doesn't have to be directed to us. We can take things in socially that our parents do and think that, okay, that's the end all be all. I heard this story from this lady a little while ago, and she was upset with her husband, because she liked her turkey to be cooked in two little pans and all this stuff. And this year her husband didn't have the two little pans. He bought a big pan. He's like, why are we getting two little pans? Let's put the turkey in the big pan. Let's resolve all of this. This is too much work. And the lady was completely ticked off, and she's just, it's not going to taste the same. It's not going to be the same. And just upset, just couldn't. And, he ruined Thanksgiving and da 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 da. And they couldn't understand why she was so upset or irrational about this thing. And she was like, this is the way that my mother did it. And this is the way that I've seen her do it. This is the way that I have to do it for it to come out that way. And so now they go to dinner and everybody's sitting down and everybody is at the table. And, she's upset. And her mother was asking her, like, what's wrong? Everything looks great. Everything tastes great. Why are you so upset? And she explained that her husband did the big pan. And the mom said to her, we had two small pans because that's all we could afford. It wasn't about the flavor or the taste. It was what they could afford at the time to put their turkey in. So she took it in as it wasn't going to taste the same. It wasn't going to be the same. It wasn't the same because it wasn't in those two little pans, but it was the same. It was just her experiences trained her in a way to think this is how it had to be. And a lot of times that's how we experience things. It doesn't even have to be said or taught. We just absorb it as so.
Yeah. I want to move to this because you've given us some incredible insight on despair, depression, and we should have a good working definition of it and some practical things to do. I made the argument and the case on Sunday that the cure for it is hope.
It is.
Despair, the technical term is the lack of hope, right? So the cure for despair is hope. How big do you see hope in the whole context? I want you to put on your spiritual hat on this one. And how significant does hope play a role in getting through, navigating, and managing despair and even depression, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think that hope is really impactful because it gives us something to strive towards. I think hope, if you want to, I know you want me to take it spiritual, but let's just keep it humanely, just physical.
Cool. Yes.
If there's a person who is sickly and say they have cancer and the hope is, I'm going to beat this, I need this one more treatment. Looking at that last treatment, facing that final day to ring that bell to say, I've done treatment. That is the hope. They're fighting to get to that point. They're fighting to get whole because they see the end of the tunnel. And a lot of the times when you're a person in despair or depressed, you don't see the end. It's just this ongoing blackness that you are stuck in. There is no light. There is no silver lining. There's no positivity. But hope gives you that little inkling that there's more, that there's better, that there's something just beyond that hill that you can reach out for. So it's like faith, that evidence of things hoped for that we hope for, but they're not seen.
I say hope is based on its temperament. That's how I declare. How would you define hope? How would you define hope?
I feel that hope is the feeling or the knowing of something to look forward to. That's my definition of hope. There's something to strive towards. There's a goal. That's my thing of hope. That positive emotion of I'm going to make it there. I always kind of parallel hope and faith together.
I got it. How would you apply it? So we talked about it as this scene, basically lighted at the table, lighted in tunnel.
Mhm.
Whichever way you want to kind of grapple with this, how can I
Mhm.
find hope in midst of despair? Right? Like there's one of the things that and this is why I enjoy moments like this, is that I
Mhm.
do feel sometimes in a sermonic presentation,
Mhm.
I'm giving the macro view of it, right? I'm having to give this overarching view. I only get a few moments on Sunday to share it.
Mhm.
But what are some things that you would say how we can help to not only identify hope but
Mhm.
apply hope? Because I do think most people misinterpret hope. We in the
Mhm.
secular realm we call it like a wish. I'm hoping something,
Yeah.
but hope
Mhm.
is not a wish. It's this concrete confidence in the fulfillment and presence of God, right? So, from that perspective, how would you help me, who's in the place of despair and depression,
Mhm.
don't know what I'm looking for, don't know what I that even hope is available?
Mhm.
What would you?
So I thought of three small things because sometimes when we look at things so huge, some people, it's all individual. Some people can think of hope as this huge thing of, but I think if we take it into like little microbites, it can be something that is palatable for everyone.
Okay,
So I tell people basically start where you are. You know what I'm
start with
saying? Where you are, start there and just take one step at a time towards a small attainable goal. So if it is okay, I'm so just feeling not feeling myself. I don't even want to leave the house. No, I don't want to leave my room. Um, then do this. Get up and say, okay, tomorrow I'm just gonna get up. I'm gonna get myself a shower and I'm gonna step out that door 10 steps.
mm,
And then I'm just giving myself 10 steps outside this room door and see how that improves my feeling. And
wow,
each day, give yourself a little bit more. It doesn't have to be an overwhelming thing. If you take in a step, then God will take two. You need to take a step forward and take a step forward, and people will meet you exactly where you are.
that's
Um, so yeah, so that's one of them. It's just small. Cultivate like a spiritual practice,
mm,
something that you can do to help motivate you. A lot of times, music motivates people. A certain beat, a certain melody, a certain bass drop, a certain a soprano, a certain something. Or sometimes it's the word. A certain pastor may speak to you through a certain thing. You know, cultivate it as a practice. Say, okay, I'm just going to wake up today and I just need to read one verse today or before I go to bed. Um, in 2 weeks, I want to be able to complete this chapter and just continue to practice something spiritual that is positive and to keep yourself encouraged. And if you can, don't do it alone. Get someone who is supportive along with your journey. If you can't do it, grab a partner. Say, hey, I need you to hold me accountable while I try to take these steps to my betterment. There are going to be days that I'm going to be nasty, I'm going to be mean, I'm not going to want to talk to you, but I need you to hold me accountable and I need you to help me get through this. We don't have to be by ourselves. Sometimes when we're alone, that's where the enemy plays with us. When there is no one else there, he likes to whisper things in our ear of negativity. You're not going to see. I told you no one cared about you because they didn't call. See, this is why you can't leave the house. Look, you done lost your job. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna pay? When you are ruminating on those things day in, day out, day after day, one day turns into 5 days, turns into 10 days, turns into 15 days, and then you're in this whole state of depression.
yeah,
So just changing that automatic thought as soon as it comes in your head, you know what? Okay, the enemy whispers something. Well, God said, well, Jesus said, the Bible says, and continue to combat that with what you know spiritually. If you don't know spiritually, hey, my mama said that I'm going to be the head and not the tail. Hey, my
mhm,
sister told me that I'm beautiful. I don't have to listen to the enemy. Hey, my friend said that I'm the best at this creative thing, and continue to speak those affirmations in your life. I think it was Miss Nichols, who said, you know, when she came out of a bad situation and she was depressed. She wrote 25 affirmations about herself on sticky notes and pasted them to her mirror. And she spoke those affirmations to herself every single day and every single night before she went to bed. And those were the things that helped to encourage her and move her forward.
Wow, that's good. I think all those are great. I think a lot of us should have, man, that's some good stuff too. The practice piece is important.
Hmm.
Definitely taking small, and that was huge.
Hmm.
Don't have those moments, and I do think we do sometimes want to be out of stuff so fast
Hmm.
that we make it so large of something to do that we don't even take the initial step.
Hmm.
And then having someone with you or somebody, accountability partner, or someone just to, we shouldn't go through this life, right? God told Adam, it's not good for you to be alone. It wasn't, that was a whole piece of not just covenant, but also it was really speaking about pursuing, and having someone help push you on and to
Hmm.
encourage you. And that's important. That's a major part of what we do. Man, that's some good stuff, Dr. Brian. You're really helping us tonight. You really are helping us tonight. What would you say? How would you gave the practical piece? What
Hmm. Hmm.
what's some things you do for you? What are some
For me,
do to develop that hopeful disposition?
I definitely I do the affirmations. I believe in affirmations, so I definitely say my affirmations. Like I said, I do play worship as I'm driving to work, a lot of positivity in my environment. I do have a wonderful support system in my sisters. It's four of us. We're all over the United States a little bit, and we keep a sister text or a sister talk that goes that I think it's been over 5 years now that we're always in each other's stuff, and they always encourage me every day and I encourage them every day. Having my sister here, which is why I'm here in Augusta, she's a ball of sunshine. Like, it's 5 o'clock and she's singing and carrying on. So I mean, having all of those positive things around me has absolutely grounded me. My mother, just having that, I have some beautiful sisters in Christ at Faith Outreach that keeps us connected on this sister chat, and we do activities together and we encourage each other and we pray every night together. So if there is a space where I'm not feeling at my best spiritually, I have people that I can reach out to and be like, hey, I'm not in a good headspace. And you know what? It's okay to not be okay. Sometimes people think that, the person that is encouraging, that is nurturing, that is covering is always in a great headspace. But there are times when even the helpers get weak, even the helpers need someone to help them. And so it's always great to know that you have that. And I can call Bishop, who is my dad. I call him dad, and he makes time for me. As big as his church is, as big, I can call him in the middle of the day and be like, you know what, Dad, I just need to come spend some time with you and this lady. And they make that time for me if I need it. And it's never put them out their way. They'll come and have dinner with me and just sit down with me and talk to me. And I appreciate having that. And I'm just thankful for those things.
Awesome. Any resources that you got? You got anything any resources that you can think of? And even if you don't, if you think of it afterwards, we'll post it. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
that kind of hopeful disposition. Anything you could think of, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. You can grab some you can grab Dalio is an app for journaling. So journaling is really helpful also, but Dalio is on the app. So if you don't feel like writing typing, you can speak it into it, like transcribe it in. And Calm is another app that also helps with the meditation and also helps with just some
I
tips
got
on being well.
I download.
Yeah, you can definitely download those. I tell people all the time, my favorite go-to group, the Honest Guys on YouTube, their guided meditation, their sleep meditation. I
Okay.
think they're great. Definitely, if you need a specialist, therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men, Black Therapist Rocks, Psychology Today. They have so many different resources. If you don't want to go through anybody or anything, Google up mindfulness exercises that helps you to practice deep breathing. They also have, if you have to go to work, they also have mindfulness activities that you can sit at your desk and do, like stretches, standing, sitting, bending, to help you kind of take some of that tension out of your body. You know, sometimes we're so tense and we don't realize it. I saw this little meme the other day and I was cracking up because it was like, sis, relax your shoulders, move your tongue off the roof of your mouth, this, that, and the third. And I swear at that time I was doing the exact thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tense. And I didn't even realize it.
Yep.
And I veg out, lay like broccoli, and talk myself down through it. But it's the truth. We don't recognize how we hold tension in our muscles. And
Yeah.
that's when I talk about that muscle memory, how it's important for us to be aware of what's going on in our bodies, even when we're just sitting and we're thinking we're relaxing.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. We're gonna post some of those resources because I think they are very helpful.
Hmm.
I'm really intrigued in that Dallo. I have the Calm app. I'm
Hmm.
intrigued in that Dallo. So that's like a journaling app, you said? It kind of,
Yeah, Dailyo is like a journaling app. And what I like about Dailyo is, like, say you forget
how you
and you
spell
have,
that?
I think it's Daylio.
Okay.
Daylio. Yeah, and what I like about it is if you don't write in it, it's like, hey, you didn't write in me today. You didn't have anything to say. Like, it talks to you like it's like, hey, you didn't
DAY.
have anything to say today.
Okay.
So I do like that. So I've enjoyed that app, and you learn resources as you go. So if I find any more, I definitely will get them to you so you can add them to this.
That's good. I appreciate it. We'll give them some final wrap up thoughts, man. This has been incredible. I can't believe it's already been
I know
an
an hour.
hour.
It went
Man,
by really fast.
it
Just
did.
wanted
You've been
people to know that um, there are people out there to help you. If you don't know anyone, definitely talk to your leadership in your church. I know in your church, Lady O is awesome. She is a mental health person too that I know in the community, and several others. If you have children, there are play therapists in the area that can help. A lot of people don't recognize that a child's first language is play, and a lot of trauma can be worked through play therapy. We
mhm.
therapists in the Augusta area. We have so many therapists that are out here that are willing to work with you. Recognize that if you are thinking about expense, contact your jobs. They have EAP programs that can cover, depending on the job, up to 8 sessions for free for counseling, not just for you, but for your family members also. So check in to see if that is a resource you can tap into. I believe it's www.openpath is a online resource where you can get some mental health therapy affordably, something cheap, a little cheaper, more sliding scale than what regular cost is. Talk to your insurance provider to see how much mental health coverage you have on that, and talk to them about engaging in mental health, and they'll let you know who your local providers are for their insurance company, and speak to a therapist in your community and talk to them if it's something about affordability. Ask them if they have sliding scale or if they do pro bono sessions or if they can work with you as you work through this situation.
Okay, that's good. What can we find you at, Doc? And we come back.
www.restoringharmonycounselingandconsulting.com. You can call me at 762-585-4610, and I am in the Augusta area. Thank you for having me.
Once again, what's that book? Because you also have an author too. We want to make sure
I
people get
know. So I have three, but I have two up here. I signed my own permission slip, which was that whole transition from being married to divorce, and that process from glass to stone is about my transition from kind of being in obscurity, not really wanting to talk, but being the support for everybody else, to coming forth to being someone who has to be in the front and advocate and educate on things that I never thought I would be able to do. So both books are there, and you can contact me and I'll get them out to you.
awesome. Again, I really appreciate you. You have been a true asset to us. Tell your bishop, Bishop Peoples, I said hello, and thank you again for sharing this gift with us. We are so grateful
Thank you.
for your insight. I mean, just just truly impactful information tonight. That I know we could sit here and talk about this all day long, but I think there's some good stuff for us to kind of do the work ourselves too. Part of the journey is you got to apply what you have, right? Once you get the information, you got to apply the information, utilize the information, and make it work in your life. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Major kudos to you. We're going to be hollering back at you. Thank you again. We love you much. All
Love
right.
you too. Bye, guys. Thank you again.
Well, once again, guys, thank y'all so much for coming and tuning in with our check up tonight. Once again, man, Dr. Natalie Bryan is a gift to the kingdom. She really, truly helps us in tremendous ways. Listen, we got one more special one next week. I can't wait to that interview, and we're going to be letting you know who I'm talking to. Tremendous thought and content creator, just an amazing gift to the body of Christ. And I know we're going to have an incredible time in our interview on next week. Listen, we got a couple more weeks for our Finding the Cure sermon. If it's been helpful to you, let us know. Hit us up in the comments section or email us so that we'll know if it is hitting the vein. One of the things that in this day and age, I just want to make sure that the word is being just applied, but it also is being helpful to you. I'm thinking about each of you, and I'm hoping that that as we navigate this next normal together, we do know that God's with us. So as we've been talking over the last few weeks about fear and worry and discouragement, and yes, even despair, good news is there's a cure, guys. We got faith, we got peace, we got joy, and we definitely got hope. So we got a couple more weeks on that. Also, a major shout out to all our graduates. I hope that you felt the love and appreciation on the last Sunday as we gave you a shout out and your own kind of special commencement. We're so proud of you. We're excited for the bright future that you're going to have. Also, just a reminder, our Hope Seed offering is still going on, and you can apply if those who have small businesses. We're trying to wrap that up the month of May, and we'll be awarding that in the month of June. Guys, I love you. Thank y'all for tuning in, and I hope it was helpful. Make sure that you tap in and know that, even small steps can be big victories, especially when it comes in the war against despair and depression. But the end of the day is we have hope, and hope is simply faith on its tiptoes. We trust and believe and have confidence in the presence of God, God's promises, and God's power. So, guys, as we release you tonight, I pray that you continue to be safe. If you're going out, venture out safely, take precaution. We're all in this together. And if we're going to make it through it, it takes all of us thinking of other people. So love you much. Y'all be easy, and I will see you soon. Peace.